Please give him a warm welcome for Ferd.
Am I on? Perfect. So, good afternoon, Bucharest. Every time I come to Bucharest, it is for something cool. So we have had hackathons here, we have a very cool event here. I'm doing a lot of work with the teams in Bucharest to build our ING data lake. We have really good people working here. I've done some really good hiring here over the past, which in essence I'm doing a little bit of now as well. As you see, my name is Ferd Scheepers. I'm the Chief Information Architect at ING, and I'm very much into data. I love data. I love everything about making it work, making it generate something very cool for everybody that's a customer of ING. But I also very much love that people understand what data does for them and the risks of data. People should be aware of what we can do with data and what other companies can do with data. And that is what my presentation in essence is all about. You know, when I give these kind of presentations maybe 5 years ago, I would say, who has a smartphone? And you know, maybe half of the audience would say, you know, that's me. 2 years ago, I would ask, who doesn't have a smartphone? And I would still have a few people raise their hands, but you know, I don't even have to ask that question these days because everybody has a smartphone. And I live by my phone. Actually, I have two. I have an iPhone, I have an Android device as well, and I use them for almost everything. And there's so many cool apps these days that make my life easy. Now, when I go to work on Monday morning, I look at Google to see how long it will take me to go there. And on those rare occasions that I'm a little bit late, some of my colleagues will always make the standard joke, analytics didn't work again. And it's true, because actually I determined how long it will take me to go to Amsterdam based on analytics. I look at Google and they do analytics of the current traffic situation and they know where I work and where I come from, and they tell me it takes you, what is it here, 39 minutes to go there. And on average, that is pretty accurate. When I go to a city and you know, I have a few hours, I do travel quite a bit, and sometimes I actually have a little bit of time to look around, I will look at many different apps to tell me what is a good place to visit. And they all know what actually I like, what is the kind of stuff I'm interested in. When I want to eat something, I look at TripAdvisor, these kinds of things, and I look at the kind of restaurant that I like. And actually all of that stuff uses the data that I and other people bring to those devices. Actually, my personal favorite, anything that reminds me of when people have a birthday. I'm really, really terrible at remembering these things, but these days it's very, very nice. LinkedIn, Facebook, they all tell me, today is Hank's birthday, so I know I can send an email saying, Hank, happy birthday. Wow, I always used to forget that. It's great, I love it, and it really makes life better. These apps change the way people do things. You know, in the past, when I traveled 20 years ago, I had a big copy of The Lonely Planet with me. And when I wanted to go to a hotel, you know, I'd open The Lonely Planet, I'd check it, I'd walk there, I'd check if it was okay. It doesn't work like that anymore. It's really make my life better. And of course, that has to do with the fact that technology now very much enables us to do really cool things with data. All of that started maybe 10, 15 years ago when Google and these kind of parties found out there was so much data they couldn't do it with traditional technologies anymore. And that was really the advent of big data and things like Hadoop, new platforms that make it possible to scan a huge amount of data. It brought in new technology paradigms. It brought in new programming languages for models, for analytics. You know, 10, 15 years ago, when we did analytics, we all used very expensive technologies from SAS, from IBM, from, say, Microsoft. These days, most of that is open source. Now, at ING, we do a lot of stuff with open source. We use a lot of R modeling. We use Python. These days, we're doing a lot of streaming analytics using Apache Flink, which is, again, a very, very cool technology. But there's so many of these technologies now, it's almost impossible to know which to choose. And of course, I think some of the people who heard just the guys downstairs also talk about what is happening in Google. Machine learning, deep learning, AI, all these things are making it even more cool. Now, 5 years from now, we are here talking about how you interact with chatbots that really understand what you're typing, that use your data to know how you actually want to be approached, that give you information even before you know that you want to have that information. Because a lot of that stuff we can already do. This world is very, very, very much in movement, and it's really something that is influencing all of us. And it's all for free. I mean, isn't that very, very cool? Google, Facebook, all of them, they're like charity organizations. They give away all their good stuff for free. Wow. But of course, it was already mentioned before, if something is for free, you are not the consumer. You are not the customer. You are actually the product they are selling. All these applications, all the stuff you share, all that wonderful stuff uses your data to actually sell you or other people a product. The ad companies, those are their customers. People using that data to actually sell you a nice product, those are their customers. You are not a customer of Google. You are not a customer of Facebook. And that's all fine. I mean, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing or whatever. It does mean you should be aware of that. Can we play the video?
Pizza Palace, guaranteed hot in 30 minutes or it's free. This is Mary. May I take your order?
Hi, Mary. Yes, I'd like to order.
Is this Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Thank you for calling again, sir. I show your national identification number is 610-204-999-8-45-54610. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I see you live at 736 Montrose Court, but you're calling from your cell phone. Are you at home?
I'm just leaving work, but I'm...
Oh, we can deliver to Bob's Auto Supply. That's at 175 Lincoln Avenue, yes?
No, I'm on my way home. How do you know all this stuff?
We just got wired into the system, sir.
Oh, well, I'd like to order a couple of your double meat special pizzas.
Sure thing. There'll be a new $20 charge for those, sir.
What do you mean?
Sir, the system shows me that your medical records indicate that you have high blood pressure and extremely high cholesterol. Luckily, we have a new agreement with your national health care provider that allows us to sell you double meat pies as long as you agree to waive all future claims of liability.
What?
Do you agree, sir? You can sign the form when we deliver, but there is a charge for processing. The total is $67 even.
$67?
Well, that includes the delivery surcharge of $15 to cover the added risk to our driver of traveling through an orange zone.
I live in an orange zone?
Now you do. Looks like there was another robbery on Montrose yesterday. You could save $48 if you ordered our special Sprout Submarine Combo and picked it up yourself. Comes with tofu sticks. Those are very tasty, sir. Good value, too.
But I want double meat.
Well, I'm sure you can afford the $67 then. You just bought those tickets to Hawaii. They weren't cheap, eh? Oh, but I see you checked out the budget beach bum at the library last week. Up to you, sir.
All right. I'll get the Sprout subs.
Good choice, sir. Gotta watch that waist if you're hitting the beach, eh? 42 inches. Wow. Man, I'd say tofu and sprouts is like required.
That's how much?
Just between you and me, there's a $3 off coupon in this month's Total Men's Fitness magazine. Your wife Betty subscribes to that, right? Anyhow, clip that and it's $19.99 even. Whoa, looks like you maxed out on all your credit cards. Bring cash, okay?
Want to stop this from happening?
Of course, this is not yet reality. But be aware of how much data you are actually sharing. I assume most people actually either use Facebook or have used Facebook. Did you ever really look at what you signed up for when you gave your intellectual property, your data, to Facebook? It in essence says anything you put on Facebook, you give Facebook any right to do anything with that data. And you signed for it. So imagine you put your picture on Facebook, of you having a nice time with your friends, and all of a sudden you see that picture being used in an ad. You're no longer in control of your own data. Should that scare you? Well, a lot of people will say, I'm not worried, I have nothing to hide. And that's great. Who here feels they have nothing to hide? 2 people, that's 3 people even, great. I would say I don't have much to hide, but there's a few things I really don't want the whole world to know. Take an example of, that picture that was taken when you were in a slight state of drinking a bit too much, and you had that moment where you were just like going out, and somebody takes that picture and puts it on Facebook. And of course, he tags, that was Ferd that evening. I don't per se want my next employer, not that I'm leaving ING, but potentially my next employer to look at that picture first when they do a job interview with me. I'll tell you an anecdote. I was actually the last few days in Munich, and there's the big DataWorks summit, and I was talking to a few guys from Hortonworks, and one of those guys was telling me he's hiring people, and he just hired this really great lady, and he takes out his smartphone, and he shows me a picture of a really cute lady in a very, very small bikini. Is that really the first thing you want your employer to show to the world when they talk about you? All that stuff will get found. The internet doesn't forget. And you can say, I understand all of that, I will be careful, that's all fine. But what if somebody else puts your stuff on the internet? And they don't even have to tag you, because these days, we have facial recognition. You will be tagged. I'll take it even a step further. When I was in high school, and that's already quite some years ago, there was no such thing as Facebook. There might still be a few pictures of me at a party where I was drinking maybe a little bit more than I should have. I was 17, 18. You could still drink at that time when you were 17. If these days one of my old friends thinks about putting those pictures and scanning them in and putting them on Facebook, how could I have known at that point in time that there would ever be a Facebook and I would be tagged and people would be able to find those pictures? But still, it's just pictures, it's just stuff that happened. How about your medical records? Do you know who processes your medical records? Well, I can tell you, in some countries that is pretty well organized, in other countries, not as much. If you live in the US, you're pretty damn sure your medical records are seen by a lot of people. And what do they do with that data? That picture of you smoking, that could be used in the future to say that actually you have to pay more for your medical insurance because you're a smoker. That picture of you, being a little bit overweight, maybe at some point in time will also be used against you. You driving on the motorway, middle of the night, there's nothing happening, there is nobody there, you're speeding just that little bit too much. In a few years, we all have connected cars. Who will use that information and for what? You just happen to be near the scene of a crime 2 times. Some algorithm will pick that up and will earmark you as a potential candidate for being, that kind of person. And what will happen with that information? It is quite scary, isn't it? I love the one also about the smart meter. So I don't know about Romania, but in the Netherlands we're now replacing every electricity meter in the home by smart meters. And they will send a lot of information to the internet as well. What is going to happen with that? Of course, they all say it's only going to be used for giving you a very accurate bill at the end of the year. But that's not what's going to happen, because people will slowly start saying, hey, wouldn't it be great if we can actually give you a price for electricity based on whether there's high consumption or low consumption at this moment. The next thing is they're going to push you towards using the electricity when somebody else wants to. That data also tells you a lot about how many people are home at what point in time. I travel a lot, I happen to be home during the weekends if I'm lucky, but many times during the week I'm not home. That's interesting information. For example, I never put that I'm traveling on Facebook because I don't want people to know that I'm not at home. Sorry? Oh. We all have something to hide, right? I think we all do. It also brings up an interesting, almost philosophical question. Is our current concept of privacy still valid? So if you think about what we consider to be privacy, that is a very new concept. This is a picture of a Roman toilet. In those days, you wouldn't have your nice little comfortable toilet at home where you would close the door and you take your pants down, and it was done in public. Can you imagine being in this situation? At that time it was very normal. Roman bathhouses, everybody would go there and they would all mingle and they would wash and take a shower there. Now we do that at home. That's privacy. That concept changed over the last 2,000 years, and it's about to change again. The level of privacy we have today will go down. And we can take all kinds of measures to make sure that it stays on a certain level, but we will share, and we are already sharing, more and more information about ourselves than we did 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And with all kinds of connected devices and IoT and all these things, that will only increase. Think about all the cameras hanging around. How long will it take, you think, that facial recognition will earmark you per definition everywhere you go? It's going to happen. Of course, there are some things that we should take measures upon. And actually, I think we're very lucky that we live in the EU and not in the US. Because actually, the EU is taking measures to make sure that our data gets protected quite a bit. Whereas in the US, it only seems to get worse. I just read, it was a week ago, even less than a week ago, that now officially the bill is signed where your ISP can sell all your data on what you're doing on the internet, and they can sell it to everybody. Luckily, the EU is doing something else. So there's this new regulation out, and it actually becomes effective about a year from now, May next year, and it's called GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. And actually wants to achieve two things. One is give you, the owner of the data, the citizen of the EU, some measure of control on what people can do with your data. But at least as important, it wants to simplify all the regulations around data, especially for companies that are not based in the EU. There was already some previous regulation around privacy, but it's pretty much 20 years old. And it actually made it very hard to enforce things because it was not very clear. GDPR will give us quite a few things. So this is actually the only slide that I have with a lot of text on there. I'm not going to read all of that, but important thing is every EU citizen is protected by GDPR, all of us. But it also means that actually anybody that touches your data, whether they're an EU company or not, falls under this regulation. And the scary one for any big corporation is can lead to penalties of up to 4% of worldwide turnover. Now, I don't know exactly on the billion what the turnover of ING is, but I can tell you those penalties would run into the billions. That is a lot of money. Think about the turnover of a Google, of a Facebook. 4% is a lot. It can take businesses really, totally out of business. Another nice one is that anything around automated decision-making based on algorithms, etc., you can actually say, I disagree. I want to know. I want to know what happened. I want to look at this algorithm. I want to challenge it. So for example, if you apply for a loan, you don't get it because of some automated algorithm, you have the right to challenge that. That's interesting. It also says something very important, and that is that if I want to do something with your data, I have to ask you politely. You have to give me consent. Now, of course, this is a very interesting one, but what does that mean? Because when you look at what you did with Facebook over there, you already gave consent. You actually said, you can do everything with my data. That's very explicit consent. You read the document, at least we assume you did, and you say yes. So who of you read all what was the latest one, 83 pages of document that Apple gives you when you say that you want to use iTunes? Me neither. One of the things that is going to change, though, is what many people call the right to be forgotten, but what it officially is actually called the right to be erased. So you can tell any company, I want to get some of that data away, but it's not yet 100% clear how companies have to fill that in. So let's say that you actually committed murder, I hope not. You go to jail. You can't tell the internet to forget that you committed murder. That's not it. But if actually you are accused of something, and it turns out not to be true, you can actually ask people to remove that. It also means that if you happen to be a customer of a big organization and you want to leave that company, you can tell the company, forget about me, forget about my past, all these things. But that very much clashes with other regulations that say, we need to keep a record of everything we did for you for the last 10 years. How's that going to happen? And the last one, that is the most interesting one, because I still have no idea how in God's name we're going to do that. You can actually ask any company to give you all the data they have on you so you can transfer it to somebody else. I haven't got a clue how that is going to work. If somebody comes to ING and they say, give me all the data, okay, we can arrange that. That is not a big issue. But then you go to another bank, Bank of Transylvania here in Romania, and say, please upload all this data. Never gonna work. I honestly don't know what they had in mind here. But most of the regulation is actually pretty cool. I use this picture quite a lot. This is a single process for a single country at ING. It's beautiful, isn't it? And now you need to explain where customer data is in this picture. My customer data, where is it in this huge mess of systems that are all connected and all exchanging information? How do I get control on that? How do I manage consent about what I want to do with your data? It's a big problem. You know, I can go the Facebook way and say, if you sign up with ING, you sell your soul to the devil. That's probably not going to be the best one. But I could also ask you for any little thing that we do, an explicit yes or no. And then you would have this list of, say, 1,700 little sliders. Yes, no, 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 yes. That's also unmanageable. So we need to find a really good way about what to do there. Now, this morning there was also a nice presentation where it was talked about you can actually use your data in a certain relationship that you have with actually the company that you're doing this with. So when you put your stuff on Facebook, you understand that actually it will be used and that it is public. When you go to a bank, you know that the data will be used for banking. So probably it will be a little bit in that space that we need to understand, the context of what it is. But if, for example, we want to send you ads, for new products based on your data, you probably have to ask for that. One thing I already mentioned before, the right to be erased and other retention policies that apply. So you come to ING, you buy a product, 2 years later you leave the bank, you say, please erase me, and a year after that you say, you sold me a crappy product 3 years ago, prove that you did the right thing. If we erased your data, we're in trouble. If we don't erase your data, we also may be in trouble. So there's going to be quite some interesting court cases over the next few years to figure out how this is actually going to work. Total retention policy, we really have to manage that very well. In this complex landscape, that's almost impossible. How do we make sure that you as the customer can actually see all your data? You call us, and actually I intend to do that. So May next year, I will call ING and I will say, dear ING, please give me all my data. Because I want to figure out whether we did that the right way. It's going to be really hard to do this. But actually, and I think a lot of people, they don't see that per se, it is a really big opportunity to be different. If we really want to take our message to the audience serious, that we want to be the bank that helps you, stay a step ahead in life and in business, this is an opportunity to actually use your data for that purpose and that purpose only. If we show that we are actually the company, the bank that uses your data the right way, I think there's a golden business opportunity there. Because people will think about these things. Maybe not everybody, maybe, and it's also different in different countries. But there's an opportunity to actually show that you're doing the right thing. Also prove that you're doing the right thing. Now, actually, already before we started on this beautiful journey at ING, we started to think about implementing a new architecture around data. So it's called the ING Data Lake architecture. I'm definitely not going to elaborate on this whole picture. But it is something that we're building out, that we're delivering to the whole world. And it's very much focused on being in control of all the data in the bank. And this architecture is now, I think the last few countries are in rollout at this moment. The central component of all of this is actually something we call our data catalog. And that is really the place where we want to know all about all the data in the whole bank in one place with an overview of, is it personal or not, where is it, in which system, what is the retention policy, all these things in one place. In essence, when I explain this story, I always say, this is how I would like my data in a bank to be organized, like a library. And what is good about a library, it's nicely organized, you know where to find stuff. You have this, especially for people my age, we still remember this old-fashioned kind of card system in your library. You could go there, you could open it, you could browse to it, you could find your favorite author, you could find the date of publication, you could find the original language. All these little tags around that book or around your data that we tend to call metadata. Metadata is going to be key in all of this. Metadata is going to drive your success around GDPR implementation. If you have this under control, if you have this central location that tells you where is the customer data, what can I do with it, how long do I need to keep it, how well am I in control of all my data, and I can see that in one place, I dare any regulator to come to ING, open up this whole kind of worms that we call the system of record landscape, and I can point at this one place and say, it's there. Have a look. It's not documentation, it is reality. With GDPR, some people think, this might end this beautiful economy that we have today around all these free apps, gathering your data, etc. Apparently, people are not that worried because this is Google's stock price from 2 days ago. It's still going up. So apparently most people don't worry about the effects this will have on the Googles and Facebooks of this world. The question mark that I see is, of course, will this be an inhibitor for new startups in Europe or not? Will it be something like, no, I'd rather actually start in Asia or the US because the legislation is a little bit more lax there and I can play around a bit more? Or will it actually be a way for European startups to do it the right way? Because a lot of this legislation will follow to other countries as well. In Canada, I was there last week, they are copying what the EU is doing. They're definitely letting go of this, chaos that is now being created in the US. They are copying the EU regulations. Most important, of course, how will you vote? This morning was called Vote with Your Feet. How will you vote on these kinds of systems? If you don't care about privacy and you just continue using anything and you consent to anything, it doesn't matter. But if you start being strict on these things and you start choosing applications, systems that actually you can trust, you start using companies that you have confidence in, you actually find that privacy is important to you, it might change. And some of those applications, some of those companies might be out of business because they don't take your privacy that sensitive, that they don't think it's very important to them. And they will have to change. I think the most important question to all of us here is, what do we want to do with our data? Now, definitely, I'm not going to stop using TripAdvisor or all these things. I will still use most of these apps because I'm not too worried about these kinds of things. But I do intend to use my brain about what I actually put about myself and about other people on the internet. It's small things sometimes. So when I throw out my old phone, I literally nuke it. I put it in the microwave for a minute. Nothing on that thing works anymore. Trust me, nobody will be able to do that. If you don't, and somebody will find your old phone, or you turn it in, they can see all your pictures. Trust me, everything. And I don't know many of those pictures you should want to have private or not, that's also not important. But think about these things. Actually ask the companies that you do business with, from May next year, where's my data? Show me. If you think you're in control, if you think you did all this GDPR stuff, ask them. It's a good watermark to see whether they actually implemented these things or not, whether you can trust them. A very simple one, don't put all your pictures on Facebook. Just don't. No, it will be used. It will be found. The internet really, truly never, ever forgets. But also things like, on my phone, I have a lot of things that use my location in the background. Think about how many of those you really want to share. Is it really important that 24/7, I don't know, Vivino or some other app knows your location? Those are the little things you can think about yourself. And then last but not least, what does it mean for data professionals? Because this is a really interesting area, and a lot is happening here. The technology is changing, the regulations are changing. If you are in this space, this is your moment. It was a few years ago that people already said, data scientists are the new sexy. I'm not a data scientist, but I am the new sexy, of course. It is really an opportunity to choose a company that does the stuff that you like, that really also thinks same like you, that uses cool technology, that uses all the stuff out there, that really is innovative in this space. But also think about, do I feel happy with a company that actually does things that, as a person, I wouldn't want to happen with my data? Now, this is an ING Loves IT event, and I would actually love to have an ING Loves Data event, because we do love data. But we really want to use it for making people's life better. We really want to use it for making the interaction with ING less frictionful. We really want to help people with the data that we have on them. And we really do cool stuff. So at the moment, I'm together with a lot of big vendors out there leading an open metadata initiative. So we'll work together with Hortonworks, with IBM, with SAS. I'll be at Confluent next week to talk to them about how we get open metadata into Kafka. And I'm hiring, right here in Romania, a team to build this. There's a lot of companies that want you. I think, especially now in Romania, you are the ones that can choose. It's not up to us to choose you guys, it's up to you guys to choose us or somebody else. And that's great. My suggestion to all of you is think about where you would like to work, think about how you as a person feel about your data, and choose a company that feels the same. And with that, that's the end of my presentation, but I really hope you guys have some questions.
Hello. I want to ask you, which big data technology do you use in the ING data lake?
So our data lake actually has more than only big data technologies. So we both have structured data, and I would call them almost old-fashioned traditional data warehouses. But we also use the Hadoop ecosystem. So we especially use the open source implementation by Hortonworks. And in there, we use the traditional Hadoop tools. We use R, for example, for analytics. We use a lot of Python in the data lake. But also at this moment, we're actually building out a real-time streaming platform based on Apache Flink, which is also one of those new vendors out there that does really cool things. And I think they're, at this moment, the best streaming platform that you can get in the open source. So we're actually also working together with them by building out this Flink platform and actually also getting metadata in there. So those are the main ones at this moment.
Okay, thank you.
Just a minute.
Just 1 second.
Does biometrics are included into GDPR in 2018?
Not per se. So GDPR doesn't tell you how you actually should be identifying yourself towards a company. However, of course, if we use your biometric information that is something that is personal to you, and we have to manage like any data that is personal. But be aware, a lot of data that falls under this regulation, a lot of people don't think about it. Your IP address is personal data. Your MAC address is personal data. A lot of that stuff is. So if you look at a bank and what we do, I would say almost everything that's in our systems of record is personal data. Your balance, your name, your accounts, all these things are personal. So definitely, where we use biometric information, it is part of the regulation.
What's your opinion on using VPNs to protect our personal information when browsing the internet?
VPNs?
Yes.
VPNs are great for what they've been made for. So we do indeed use here and there really, let's say, security or networking level to make sure people cannot get to all the data. At the end of the day, that's not good enough, because data will find its way everywhere. One of the reasons we're building out this infrastructure is that we see so much shadow IT in companies like ING, where people go into some place, they copy data on a memory stick, and they use it somewhere else. There's too many easy ways to bypass these kind of ring-fence systems. So we really believe in tagging all the data in the bank, making sure that nobody can access data unless they go through this layer of metadata that says what you can do with it. And we are actually going to implement something else around our data lake, a very thin data virtualization layer that will be a single point of, let's call it, access to all the data in the data lake based on metadata. So it's a combination of these things. Networking alone will definitely not be enough.
What skills are you looking for?
What skills?
What skills, yes.
So for the project I'm doing, I'm looking at people that understand a little bit about data and metadata, but definitely also have some Scala and Java skills. So I'm really looking for guys that, together with us and some other companies, start building, as an open source implementation, a true open metadata repository. So we are now looking at Apache Atlas as the foundation of all of this, which is 90% Java, 10% Scala, around that. There's some graph databases underneath as well. There is some usage of NoSQL stores in there. If people, have good programming skills in the Java Scala area, they understand a little bit about data and metadata. If they have more information, working with graphs and NoSQL stores, that is perfect. If they, are just qualified good programmers who would love to work on open source, I'll take them.
No more questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you all.